one of the quotes that I remember from General Electric at the very early stages of my career was internal audit is only as good as its people. So we have the people, the auditors, the auditor in charge was been spending times and weeks on days and weeks on a review, and does not always have the visibility to present its own job to the highest levels in the organization. I want to give them the recognition to be seen and recognized as the people who actually were drawing those points.
This episode is brought to you by Green Skies Analytics, an audit analytics service provider that works with internal audit departments that have data analysts and are still frustrated with trying to make analytics actually work, aren't getting the expected ROI, who can't break through the communication barrier between the analysts and the audit team, and those that need experienced direction for an audit analytics strategy and process. Those that feel like they've wasted time and money on trainings, aren't getting the value they want, not prioritizing the highest risk areas for the organizations, or have projects that seemingly never get completed. Do you deal with any of that? If you do, go to the show notes of this episode and click the Green Skies Analytics link, or go to greenskiesanalytics.com to schedule a call and understand how Green Skies Analytics makes analytics actually work for internal audit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell, and today we have on the show Michele Variale. He is the Chief Audit and Risk Officer for Telepass out of Italy. And his team is doing something that I haven't heard of before. And so it's pretty innovative, and we wanted to make sure to capture as much of the, how are you doing this? What are the benefits? What's it been like? Real world use cases from Michele during the conversation. So what they're doing is, of course, they have their one-page kind of written audit report, but then they also are sending 1-2-ish minute videos to the CEO and some other stakeholders describing the audit report. And so Michele goes into detail into what those 1 to 2 minutes are comprised of, and specifically breaks down how much time they spend on each section. But the benefits that we hit on are absolutely incredible, and some areas that I would not have even considered. I mean, I know there's benefits to using video. The communication could be more effective than just writing. Obviously, more face-to-face time, you're going to communicate that more effectively. But then towards the end, so probably the last 10 minutes, if you listen to nothing else, I would listen to the last 10-ish minutes. We talk about a certain benefit where you have the AIC, who is also typically in the video, talking about the issues and things like that. And we hit on a benefit that I think would help solve one of the major issues that we have in internal audit, and especially the perception of internal audit. So again, if nothing else, listen to those last 10 minutes. I try to think about when we do these shows, I try to think about, all right, what questions is the audience going to have for the guests? Let me try to ask those so we can answer those. And there was honestly too many that kept popping in my head as we were going through this. And so I asked Michele at the end, I said, hey, is it cool if people reach out to you if they have questions? Because I know there's going to be a lot of questions from this. And he said, yes. So of course, you can hit him up on LinkedIn. His LinkedIn profile link, it'll be in the show notes, as well as in the email newsletter for those that are not signed up for that. So with all that said, here we go. What's been in your internet browsing history or your Chat GPT history as of late?
Yeah, so in the last months, I've been studying and researching a lot about the history of internal auditing. At a point in time, I realized we are thinking a lot about how the profession should evolve further in the future, but I'm not entirely sure that all of us know that our profession has a pretty decent age, roughly 2,000 years. So the topic of evolution of internal audit is not a topic of today. It's a topic that has been there for quite a few centuries right now. And so that's in my browsing history. And if I think about my Chat GPT browsing history, I would say a few questions for ideas for my gift to my wife, Paula.
Very nice. Yeah, it's pretty brilliant for I think it's going to save a lot of marriages. Chat GPT is. If you need to
Yeah.
write a sweet little note into a birthday card or something, like just outsource that now. Well, I think the history thing is super interesting, and I hope that we can maybe you could write a blog post or a LinkedIn article or something like that. I think that would be very interesting. When you said history of internal audit, I thought, okay, like the past 70 years or so, back 2000s. Clearly, there's a big gap in my understanding of the history of the profession, but I know, I think it's in Richard Chambers' Agents of Change book. He does a couple of pages, maybe a chapter on the history, the most recent history, as I was thinking of it. And I remember reading through it and going, at whatever point, I forget when we went to risk-based auditing, I went, you were just thought that's like, that we knew that forever, that's how it's always been done. So I think it
Yeah.
is important and interesting to understand like where we are, and that can help, obviously to a degree predict maybe where we're going, and hopefully figure out some of the
Correct.
areas and landmines that we can step over this time.
Correct. Correct.
So the main topic of conversation today, and it's super interesting and innovative, and it's I would say a tool that has been widely used, especially over the past 4 years, although I don't think everyone is using it in the same manner that you are. So I'll just broadly let you kind of introduce it. But I know that you are using videos, not necessarily Zoom or Teams video conferences, but videos as part of your audit reporting procedures. And so can you just kind of talk us through, like, how are you specifically using video to communicate audit findings and communicate to the CEO, et cetera?
Yeah. So before jumping to the how, I've been thinking quite a while for on the why, a new way of talking to certain people and communicating items to certain people is needed. There's a lot of debate going on. There's a lot of blah blah on the fact that internal audit should communicate better, and I believe that there's a wide agreement across the globe on the fact that internal audit should communicate better or communicate well.
Mm-hmm.
What I am struggling, or what I was struggling, was about transitioning from the desire of communicating better to communicate better in practical terms. Now, we agreed that communication should be tailored to the audience. And if we think at the standard way, or the standard audit reports that we deploy to our customers, that their needs of information can be very different, one person to the other. Normally, the level of detail in our reports is very different if you're talking to a CEO or if you're talking to an IT manager, okay? And if you're talking to the chairman of the board, well, then the need will be different as well, or the chairman of the audit committee or the risk committee. So the more you climb the organizational ladder, the less details are needed. And I was questioning the paradigm that an audit report can fit every information need. So initially, we started by challenging ourselves on a few topics, like knowing better ourselves as individuals, knowing better our stakeholders, and while we were understanding better our positioning in terms of behavioral science and all this stuff, we realized that our stakeholders have completely different needs. And especially when talking to a CEO or a board of directors chairman or audit committee chairman, the real questions that these people normally have is, okay, well, why have they looked at this process? Why does it matter? Why is it important? And second question, should I be concerned or not? And then maybe they want to know if management is on top of what needs to be done. And also, they need to understand if they need to add one point to their to-do list. All of the additional detail is useless, because in practical terms, they will not act on action plans. They will not be very interested in challenging recommendations. They want to know our opinion on the process. Very often, it happens that you talk to a CEO and you just cross your CEO in a corridor, and he or she will simply ask, how is that business continuity audit going? You're not going to share details. You're not going to share findings and recommendations. You're going to provide a very high-level elevator speech on these matters. So
yeah, you just go, yep, thumbs up, it's good, or thumbs down, it's not going great. I'll tell you, unless they need to know some details about why it's not going great.
Okay. So that's the why we thought it was important to add a piece to our standard report. We have our audit report. We have our one-page highlight slide with the key bullet points, and that's fine. But these are words that are written on paper. And sometimes communication can be much more effective by talking with someone. If I tell you, Trent, I've looked at the procurement process. Overall, it's working okay. Yeah, there's some minor adjustments that need to be made, but the procurement team is on top of them. Everything will be sorted out in 2 months. That's the kind of information that a CEO is really looking for. They're looking for assurance. Assurance doesn't mean to have all of the details of a process of what we have looked at and why. They want to know what we believe about risk management, the awareness of risk management by the people in charge. They want to know if there's important pieces that they have not been considering with the right attention, and if something is falling off the radar screen. We tend to be, as auditors, a bit reluctant in sharing this kind of information in written audit reports sometimes. How often do we communicate in audit reports? Look, the procurement team is pretty smart. Well, we don't say these things, we don't write these things, but these are very important pieces of communication. So we have our audit report, which is written. We have a one-page highlight slide that falls in our pack to the board and to the audit committee and risk committee. But then we have a video. That's a 1 minute, 1.5 minute video. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. That is sent only to the chairman of the board, the chairman of the risk committee, and the CEO of the company. These people have many needs and they don't have time. So that's basically the why and how we have added one piece to the puzzle of our audit communication.
Okay. And we'll get into the details of exactly the makeup of it. I know you said 1 minute to 2 minutes, but we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what those specifically look like. But I can imagine, I know when we talk analytics with folks in any kind of public setting, there's always the question of, hey, what tools do you use? Yeah, it's just like, tools really aren't that important, but it is part of the process. So we look at people, process, and technology. Obviously, technology is part of that. And so I'm sure there's people right now going, okay, yep, I get it. Video, keep it short, communicate through video. That sounds great. What kind of tool should we use? And so I do want to ask you what tools you use. And also, I know I use, and I can talk about the tool that I use a little bit, but the tool that I could imagine there's people going, okay, how many takes does it take to do this? Do you have someone that you then go in and edit it? Do you have a 5-minute video you edit down to 2 minutes? Or So just kind of walk us through that process in terms of tools you use. Do you edit them at all, or how does that work?
As a team, we have been thinking quite a while about the right tool to be used. Before starting this initiative of kicking off video audit reporting, in my team, my first question was, okay, what tool should we use? To me, that's the first factor that will lead to failure of the initiative. The topic we are talking about is simply recording a video. You can do it with very simple tools. You can simply send yourself a Teams invite and record the Teams invite. That will work. The selection and refinement of the editing of the video will come with time. We have kicked off this initiative roughly 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, and we realized that our research and development should not be delayed by software selection, software use, and whatsoever. We said, okay, we want to do something innovative. Let's start with the easiest thing we have already available and that maybe everybody has available, which is Microsoft Teams. You simply record a Microsoft Teams meeting. It works extremely well for the purposes of an innovation which is in its first steps. I am pretty confident that going forward, we will try to refine this. And maybe we would go to more sophisticated tools going forward. There are many. I don't want to mention one. There are a lot of video editing softwares and tools. But my suggestion to all of the colleagues listening to the podcast that will be interested in exploring this is don't be stopped by technology. Let's just record something. And use the softwares that you already have in your laptop. That will work.
I know that when, like, we use videos all the time. I use it for the podcast to send questions to people or to the editors and the people that help pull the content together. But a lot of times, I mean, I just did it yesterday. There's if I'm looking at a data file and I had just a lot of questions about the data. What does this mean? Is this a unique identifier? Should I remove these? Are these duplicate? And it's so difficult and time consuming and ineffective to try to write that in an email. So you can either take screenshots and write it up. Is this, this? Or if I remove this, is that right? Can you go to the business nest and this, et cetera? Which inevitably they're going to look at it and there's going to be something that they missed through the communication. Either I didn't communicate it effectively or well, I guess that would be it. Or there's a misunderstanding somewhere and you go, that's not what I meant. Can you go back to the nest? So anyway, significantly, and that takes forever. Significantly easier is just to open up.
It is. It really depends. It really depends, Trent, on how clear thinker you are on the result of your audits, how confident you are on the opinion you have. If you are extremely confident that, look, I've audited the billing process, overall it's working okay, but there's these two aspects that we should address first. Okay? It doesn't take many takes to share that piece of information, especially if you're talking your native language, which is not the language that I'm talking right now. It also depends on how confident auditors in charge are in sharing key messages to a chairman of the board. I'm a bit anticipating one topic, which is the fact that, okay, who should be in the video? In my experience, we thought it was extremely powerful to have the chief audit executive in the video and also the auditor that was in charge of the review. So it depends, but I'm also seeing that it's now taking less and less and less takes to have a proper audit video report. Normally it takes 3 or 4 takes. 3 or 4 takes, which means in total for a couple of minutes each, 10 minutes. It's a good way to also test how strong you are on your beliefs about the results of the audit, how powerful you are on your storytelling, which is not a list of issues. It's a business discussion with a CEO on the impact of a process or any control breakdowns on the achievement of the objectives of the organization. We need to step up, and by using a video, we are forced to step up.
Yeah, and those are great points. And coming back to how you can use it also within your processes in internal audit, so when you're actually doing the work, or for us doing an analysis, is to be able to just capture that video. It takes for a handful of questions. You can capture those in a minute and a half, similar to like you're saying. But I was able to just pull up my screen and go, does this seem right to you? Are these duplicates? How do we identify these as duplicates? Should I just delete all these? This is the specific question I have of the business. Can you make sure that we're on the same page there? And that took not only less time to put together, but it's also more effective. And they can see the examples that I'm looking at on the screen. So they could also go into the file and go, okay, this is the one he was talking about, go to that row or go to that unique identifier, whatever it is. So it makes it significantly easier. It's more efficient. It's also way more effective to do that. So I really like that. And then on the takes, there is some, I think what I see from other folks and have experienced myself, this is largely, I guess there's 2 ways of looking at it, and it depends on who you're communicating to. So for that communication, it was just like a grip it and rip it, like we talk about, like just hit the record button. I'm going to show it to you. I don't care if there's uhs and ahs and pauses and likes and things don't go exactly perfect. That's fine. It's between me and this other auditor, doesn't matter. But for something that does go out to, in your case, audit committee chair, CEO, you don't want to be fumbling around going, wait, let me go. Wait a minute. I didn't have that. Okay. Yeah, I was over in AP. That's where it was. And so I found for where I do that, from my experiences, for those that listen to the show, so we record this. So like Michele and I are doing the recording right now. Then once it's over, I go back and I do the intros. And so that's where I go, this is who we have today. These are the topics. This is, their job title, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And I found that if I just pull up a LinkedIn profile and summarize it, that usually takes me 2 takes before I'll go, I messed that up. Let me start over. But if I have in my, if I have it laid out and just bullet point person's name, how to pronounce it, job title, a couple of key points that we hit on, etc. I get that usually I get it on the first take. And so all that to say, if you have a little bit of preparation before you do this, just to have some bullet points to know what to hit, I found that to make the number of takes get cut down significantly.
I totally agree. The Trent, I think that's an exercise that we should already be doing. It's not something new, or it's not something that we should do only because we want to issue a video report. We should be on top on what are the 2 or 3 key messages that we want to send. That also comes with time. I'm not entirely sure that all of the chief audit executives have 2 hours to go through each section of the audit reports with the CEO every month of the various audit reports. We don't have such time. And if we do, I'm maybe anticipating one point that maybe we can debrief further. If we spend our face-to-face time with our CEOs or board chairmen to talk about the details of audits, we are maybe stealing time to other useful topics that we want to debrief with them. When it comes to audit reports, audit results, it's us talking to someone, informing someone about the results of an audit activity. It's a one-way communication normally. I want to spend my time with my CEO talking about how the business is evolving, where does he or she see risks going forward, what's the risks over the horizon, what's the key business initiatives that we are kicking off, how can I give more value adjusting my audit plan to the business needs, if that's appropriate. That's a conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah, I like that a lot. The video for one-way communication, because when you have the face-to-face with the executive or whoever the stakeholder is, that needs to be more conversational. I think that's a really good takeaway for a lot of folks. I do want to understand, I'm sure there's people that want to know the kind of the details of this. So let's call it 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And then what are your bullet points? So if you're recording it, here are the bullet points I want to hit. Executive summary, I would assume, some objective scope. Like, what does that look like? And about maybe how much time do you spend on each?
Again, it depends on every audit report. If we're talking about an overall positive audit report, it's one story. If we're talking about a very negative audit report, that's a different story. But generally speaking, first of all, we start by introducing why have we looked at this process. Okay, we've audited the procurement process. Why we've looked at that. The things that normally you read in a background section of an written audit report, if that's a well-written audit report, pretty concise, explains why that the matter is in our attention, why we are feeling that an audit was useful on the topic. Then on that section, we don't spend more than 1 or 2 sentences, okay? If we are very solid on the reasons behind an audit, it doesn't take a lot of time to explain why the process is important to look at. I may say, for example, as you know, there's the DORA regulation that will come into force on January 17 of 2025. And in that regulation, it's very important the emphasis given to incident management. So we've looked at incident management in this audit to understand how can we be positioned in terms of being compliant to the new regulation in the next 8 or 9 months to anticipate and be compliant at the starting point. That's sufficient. Maybe I've articulated the why in the background section of a written report in maybe 15 seconds. Then obviously we want to say what are the areas that we would looked at. So particularly, in incident management, we've looked at A, B, C, and D, which is normally what you write in your scope and objectives section, without that peculiar audit jargon that we tend to use.
Yeah.
Okay. The objective of this audit is to evaluate the adequacy and effectiveness of internal control over incident management. No, we don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. We, as human beings,
right?
Even though we write like that, which is something that I hate. And let's say I spend normally no more than 15 seconds or maybe 30 seconds to quickly list the key areas of focus in the review. And I then go to the audit opinions. I say, okay, what's the main 3 or 4 points that I want to communicate? And normally I simply say there's these 3 main things that you will read in the audit report. And I simply say those 3 things and why these are important. Then maybe I can add some more flavor in the audit opinion also about the level of response by management. We've been liaising pretty well with management. They were okay. They've shared with us positive comments on our solutions that we have provided. We don't use recommendations anymore. We write down possible solutions to the problem from our perspective. That's the main part, and that would take 1 minute, 1 minute and a half.
Okay.
Forcing us to be concise.
And so you said you've been doing this for a year and a half. I would imagine if you've been doing it for a year and a half, that it's been received relatively well by the folks that you're sending them to. But what have kind of been the results after that year and a half? How well has it been received? What's been the feedback that you've gotten?
The initial feedback was a bit skeptical.
Yeah, I could see that.
By the CEO, okay, saying, okay, this is one of your innovative things, as as when you were talking to me about Agile, and you were talking to me about robotics, and you were talking to me about combined assurance. This is one of your things. That's been pretty a joke. And then he said, well, okay, and next I'm waiting for an audit podcast.
Yeah. Nice.
But then going forward, the CEO and the chairman of the board have seen huge benefit on this for the simple fact that it's freeing up time. They can simply go through a video if they are in a taxi, in a cab, if they are waiting or queuing for their flight. They can immediately get some flavor, and then they can understand what's the level of attention they need to give to an audit report. So it's being perceived extremely well. I've seen also an increased engagement. I'm an auditor since I've been an auditor for 15, maybe 16 years now, and I'm now seeing more response when compared to the level of response that I normally received by emails. Let me point out one thing that I realized only afterwards. When we were issuing only written audit reports, we were leaving to the audit rating, to a color, to a scale 1, 2, 3, or 4, the responsibility to discriminate the level of attention that the CEO had to give to the audit report. That's a pretty sad thing. It's pretty sad. You have been working as an auditor for 2 months on a review, on an important review, and the level of attention that the CEO will place on your work is only based on the rating you gave. I don't like this word. I want my CEO to invest 1 minute of his life to learn that that process has been reviewed and it's okay. And now I'm seeing, as I was saying, more response, more thank you, very clear.
We had, I like to thank you, the fact you made that. Norman Marks was on a while back, maybe last year. It might have even just been a LinkedIn comment or something. I can't recall, to be honest, but he said something to the effect of, we're talking like KPIs, and I said, one of mine I'd like to track is the number of requests from management for us to help them versus the number of times we go in there, or just the number of times they request for audits help in general. And his kind of retort was the number of genuine thank yous that you get from management. Obviously, to me, it's kind of subjective, obviously. Like, is that genuine? Is that not genuine? Is it sarcastic? Yeah, whatever. But I think, like, to your point, the fact that they're saying thank you, I think that speaks volumes to how effective and how much they appreciate it.
And we all know Norman, and we know how Norman is a bright lighthouse in the development of this profession. Obviously, I've heard that comment by Norman, and I totally agree. We are constantly challenged with the concept of giving value, providing value. The concept of value is subjective. What is valuable to you is not valuable to me, may be different from the value given to the same object or topic by Sarah or Susan or whatsoever. The only way we can measure the effectiveness of our work is by the response the true response we get. by the level of appreciation that our stakeholders share with us. It's not a number of audits. It's not a number of closed actions. It's not numbers. It's not numbers. It's respect. It's mutual respect. It's pure, genuine feedback that we get.
All right. As we start to sort of wrap up, I was thinking about some other benefits. And so chime in if there's some that I may have missed. I know we've talked off air also about some of these, and then just from my own experience, but in being able to send a video, it is, to a point you've made, respecting that person's time. And it also frees you up from having to schedule a meeting. So going back to my example, instead of having to, rather than email, if I was like, oh, this is better if we just talk about it, instead of having to go, hey, when are you free? Cool, this is when I'm free.
No.
I think it takes on average 6 emails to set a meeting, is what they've said, as what I've read.
No.
And so this is, this is a meeting that you can have whenever you want to, because you've sent the video, and so it's whenever they can get to it, instead of this back and forth of setting meetings. Then it's just, all right, yeah, when I have time, I will watch this, and that is effectively the meeting.
Exactly. And maybe you can just close your video by saying, if you've got any questions, please call me back.
Sure.
And they will do. And they will do if they have true questions.
Yeah.
But then I don't have to get crazy to find a slot in people's agenda. And I don't want to steal time to my CEO's agenda. And I want to steal the time to debrief about the business. That's the topics I want to talk about.
You know, there's that saying that goes, well, people will be like, oh, that meeting should have been an email. I think what we're talking about is people walking away going, that meeting should have been a video, instead.
And yes.
Yeah. And then the other benefit that you hit on was you have the AIC that's also in the video. And so they get some FaceTime with whoever the stakeholders may be, and someone's given example that they'd be doing this. But then it also helps to the extent that they speak, obviously, on the video. There's some public speaking to a degree that they are working on, and they don't have to deal with questions coming back to them or fielding questions, but they still get some experience in presenting to CEO, the audit committee, whoever, even if it's only for 20 seconds as their spiel or whatever. But that's still experience that you don't get otherwise most of the time.
As a chief audit executive, you are selling messages that are coming from the work of your team. And if you've got one of the quotes that I remember from General Electric at the very early stages of my career was, internal audit is only as good as its people. So we have the people, the auditors, the auditor in charge was been spending times and weeks days and weeks on a review, and does not always have the visibility to present its own job to the highest levels in the organization. I want to give them the recognition to be seen and recognized as the people who actually we're drawing those points. That's the first aspect, which is helping a lot in people retention, in people motivation. The second aspect of having auditors in charge in the video, talking to the CEO in a video, is for them to also be cognizant that there's certain topics that are not so easy to be solved and to be debriefed to a CEO. This is forcing my people to start thinking more as a CEO and then prioritize the matters that are truly important in their audit reports. I'm seeing an increase in the relevance of the topics in my audit reports because of my auditors in charge. They know that they will have to talk about those points, and they don't want to raise useless points. They want to raise valuable points. When you put your face on your work, you're putting your reputation. And it's important. It's important for people to realize that their work has a face, the face is there, and they are building their own career on the quality of the points they're raising.
Yeah, that's something. So I didn't think about that part of it. And I think it can help solve a pretty decent sized problem for internal auditors. And that there's all these findings that are just useless. And you got, to a degree, just, as the CEO, you would look at it and go, I don't care about this. And it's hard to get into that mindset to basically think, okay, would they care about this? But if you're effectively presenting it to them, then you're going to look at it and go, all right, maybe that one's not as big a deal and doesn't really matter. There's all these little findings that you read about, and you're just like, who cares? Like, really, this doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And so I know if as I'm doing an audit, in the back of my head, I'm going, okay, I know I got to present this to the CEO. That's going to make me think, like you said, more of a CEO mindset or executive mindset, and what do they actually care about? And that's something that I've given some thought to, is like, how do you change someone's mindset to that? But I think this is a great way to do it. So if nothing else, I would say for the listeners, even if they don't go through with this, just lie to your people and tell them that you're going to be doing it anyway, and see if it creates that mindset for them.
Correct. They will start to be perceived as managers, not more as business people, as people with business acumen, not as simply the auditor.
That's
the
great.
person sitting there in the audit department. That's it.
I think I did not realize that until we were just talking about it. I think that's probably one of the bigger takeaways for me through this. But I do want to give you a chance. I think there are a ton of takeaways. I mean, the value that you can get from this is huge for the CEO, for the CAE, for the AIC, for a lot of folks involved. And then we also talked about specifically, like, this is how you do this, even some tools. So we've talked about a lot. I can imagine there's people are going to have a lot of questions. Also, and how they could do it, and hey, what about doing it for management? How about doing it for the, whoever the control owner is, and that specific person, and benefits, and additional benefits that other people think of. So this might be a topic that we come back and visit. But with all that said, what do you want to leave the audience with?
Look, there's a lot of push. There's a lot of expectations. We all want our profession to evolve and to change. This is a constant topic. My key message to the audience is that we will never change until we turn our desire for change of the profession into concrete, practical objectives that every one of us should have in their yearly objectives. And I wish everybody to simply achieve your objectives. That's my wish for everybody.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.